Say thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'm David Howard, Superintendent here at Basehor-Linwood. I also have Sherry Reeves, our Assistant Superintendent here at Basehor-Linwood. We have a lot of great things going on. Basehor-Linwood is a growing school district. We're right at 2,400 students, K through 12. We have a lot of great things going on in our district. We are finishing up touches on the Career and Technical Education Center that's attached to the high school or in addition to the high school. So that should be ready to go. And we're also doing a major remodel within our high school as well this summer. So all those things should be completed in the next couple of weeks. We're really excited about the CTE stuff to give students another option other than just pushing on towards that four-year degree. With us today, we have several representatives from KASB. We have past president Amy Martin. Amy, thank you for coming. We have current school board, Basehor-Linwood School Board President Dana Miller, and she is also the KASB board president. We have Dr. John Hine with us. We have Mark Tallman, and we have Rob Gilligan in the back. So again, thank you for coming, and look forward to hearing what Mark and John have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to start. Before we do that, why don't we just go around the room and let everyone introduce themselves. So many of you probably know each other, but for those of us who are not from the community, who you are, your district, and your role in that district. I'm going to start up here.
My name is Sherry Reeves, and I'm 11th year in the Basehor-Linwood District, and this year I'm the Assistant Superintendent.
Cindy Kenton, this is my 15th year in the Basehor District, and I am elementary library.
I'm Kristen Roche, and I teach first grade at Basehor Elementary, and this will be my 12th year at Basehor. I'm Heather Osterhaus, second grade at Basehor Elementary. This is my 15th year. I'm also a parent in the district.
I am Mary Gens. I am too also a teacher here in Basehor-Linwood District and a parent, matron, and I have taught her a really long time, 30 plus years. So I'm. But anyway, so.
And I'm Amy Garver, principal at Basehor-Linwood Middle School, and this is my 15th year in the district, second year as principal, and my 3 children went through the school district as well.
I'm Gerald Baker, I'm assistant principal for middle school. This is my 3rd year in this district, and I have 2 kids in the district as well.
Michelle Kelly, I teach kindergarten at Basehor Elementary. I have 1 kiddo, but another one coming soon in the district, and then I'm also a professional development chair. So it's nice to hear from you all from that standpoint too.
Tom.
I'm Tom Brungard. I'm on the Board of Education in Junction City, and I get the prize for coming the farthest.
So we don't know that. We don't know that.
You're right. I don't know that. I was assuming, which could be a mistake. Hang on to that prize.
And
I'm Kathy Bowman. I'm the reading specialist at River Bridge, and we're doing 8 years with the district, 13 years teaching. 14 years teaching.
well, thank you very much. We appreciate you all spending a little time with us this afternoon. Our purpose today, and we will tell you, this is the second of about 25 of these meetings that we will be doing around the state for the School Board Association. And a lot of it is just to try to help school leaders and parents and community folks and others just kind of appreciate some of the big changes that are going on in education, why they're happening, maybe a way to help you talk to your fellow educators and patrons and community members, some of the things that are going on. And then we're going to talk, just give you a chance to share with us some of your concerns or ask questions about issues. We've given you a little booklet here. We're going to talk about a few things in here. We've also asked you to pick up a copy of KASB's legislative policies. Part of our function is to advocate for school boards and public education in the state legislature. We are guided by the positions that our membership takes through our delegate assembly. This is the time of year we're thinking about what our positions are and whether there's anything we're missing or need to change or reconsider. So I know we, through your representatives, and I like Dana would be happy to hear if there are some differences or some things that you think maybe we don't have quite right, or maybe issues that we should be talking about that we don't have covered. So maybe you'll have a chance to glance through that and share information back with us. You will see our nice little logo, and if you turn to page 2, a lot of you are talking about how long you've been doing this with great pride. I might note, you all seem to feel very good about that, and that's wonderful. We would note that we this year are celebrating KASB, our 100th year of serving local school boards, so it's kind of a special time for us. We're going to have a big celebration at our annual convention. And, you know, so I think we're going to talk a little bit about education now is going through a lot of changes. We've been through a lot of changes, and in that past century, we're going to have to keep doing that. But what we're focusing on now, we've kind of called this presentation A New Day for Kansas Education. And we want to just talk about what we think are 5 really important things that most of you, as people familiar with the system, are probably aware of to some extent, but maybe you haven't thought about how they kind of fit together and some of the reasons why we're doing it. You know, we put down here something I think it's always important to remind people of, and that is the fact we have never had higher levels of education than we have right now. We have more people graduating high school, going on to college, completing college degrees than we've ever done before. That's the good news. The problem is we know there are still a lot of kids who aren't getting their potential, who aren't getting the level that they're going to need to be. So the question is kind of what are we going to do about that? And this year, really 5 big things have kind of come together. The first thing is, and this is the one that's not really new, you've probably been hearing about it for a year or two, that is the State Board of Education's Kansans Can vision. The goal that Kansas should lead the world with the success of every student. That's something that a lot of things have come together with, and it's something that KASB has specifically endorsed as a goal. We list here that they're talking about as part of that, you know, 5 key outcomes that will be used to sort of judge the success of that, from kindergarten readiness, individual plans of study, higher graduation rates, higher post-secondary completion, and addressing the social and emotional needs of students as well. So that's something that we kind of knew coming in as a long-term plan by our state board. Second thing that happened this year, thanks to the legislature, and it's there, it's on our list, the Supreme Court says it isn't there, is a new finance formula. And although there were many aspects of that formula that went back to the previous one, there were also some differences. The block grant system was going to expire, so we now again have a formula which really, I think, reflects what most education groups have looked at and said had the key principles that needed to be a part of that, but also made some response to changing needs and rules by the Supreme Court. The third thing is, not only did we kind of get back to a formula that we think is largely workable, but they actually put money into it. As many of you know, this is really the first time, really since the Great Recession, that school districts are going to see an increase in their operating funding that we hopefully will actually be able to feel. You know, there's a lot of debate over will school funding up or down, and you know, if you just look at, well, are there more total dollars? There may be, but we've been falling behind inflation. Total funding altogether, we spend less per pupil when you adjust for inflation than we did in 2009. And if you only look at the operating side of things, it's well below that. So for the first time in a long time, the legislature actually put money into the system to make it work. The fourth thing is, this is of course the beginning year of a new accreditation system, which replaces the system that we've really had for over 20 years, that was in many ways based on the idea of kind of trying to get kids to a minimum level, right? I mean, the old QPA and the old No Child Left Behind was a proficiency standard that we were supposed to get 100% of kids to. And a lot of people felt that if that did some good things at the outset by making us look more at all kids, it also did a lot of leading to just kind of narrowly focusing on testing and missing a lot of other important things. The new system that is going into effect is designed to be a lot broader, responding to things that I think over many years school leaders heard from educators and parents and others that we wanted to see changes made. And a key part of that, and as we go around the state, I'll be interested in hearing if there's discussion. State Board has just this month made public a new measurement that will look at, for every district and every high school, the percent of kids that have graduated and gone on to either some type of post-secondary credential or are still enrolled after 2 years. So in the past, really everything we've looked at to measure schools has been kind of what's happening in school. This, for the first time, is saying we're going to look for the first couple of years as to how are kids doing after that point. Not because we think that every child has to go to college, but the data tells us that more kids are going to have some type of post-secondary education. This will measure that, and it's probably going to surprise some people, because I think for a lot of districts and communities and parents, you know, we haven't looked at that sort of thing in the past, and it's now right there on the internet for anyone to see. So that's something that I think, as was being presented to the legislature, you know, they really began to embrace this idea where we're going in the right direction, and there's some ways we're going to measure how we do. And the last thing that is kind of a new, big, different thing, next week at the August State Board meeting, the State Board is supposed to announce the selection of 14 schools in 7 school districts to be part of a redesign program to really look at, you know, if we're going to reach kids that haven't been successful, to what extent do we really have to change the way we operate schools? And, you know, if we knew how to do that really easily, we'd probably all be doing it. So the idea is to work with some districts that kind of volunteer to step forward, give them some extra support, and say, you know, why don't you dream and think about, if you could start school from scratch, of how it should be in 2017, what would it look like, instead of kind of a 100-year system that we inherited from 1917, that of course has changed a lot, but we've always sort of been evolving from that model. Where do we go next? So those 5 big things are happening kind of together and at once, and it's real easy to focus on any one of them. Part of the reason we're wanting to kind of do this exercise is to help people better understand how those things all fit together. The second page, if you want to look at that very quickly, is where we just tried to lay out what we think are the reasons why change is so important. Because we know change is difficult. Particularly difficult if you're being asked to, you know, don't really stop doing much of what you're doing now. You know, keep doing everything and keep doing it well and do something else. So why are we talking about having to do that? Well, we tried to lay out on here some of the things that are really critical. And it really starts by looking at why education, among other things, should be seen as really an investment in our future. And if you leap a little bit further back in this material, you see a document we released that talks about education as an investment. And it tries to make the point that there's all kinds of important things that education does that you don't put a dollar on. But for many people, our concern is, are our kids going to grow up to be successful? They're going to be able to have a reasonable sort of middle-class lifestyle. They're going to be able to stay out of poverty. The odds are increasingly you need a higher level of skills than we've expected in the past. And when we do that, this I think is the thing that we forget, when we get kids, people better educated, they have a greater chance to earn more, less chance to be in poverty. That pays off for those kids, their families, and it pays off for the state. And some of the charts you'll see as we go through this is to point out very clearly the states that have the highest per capita income, states with less poverty, are those that have the highest percentage of post-secondary educated kids. Very clear. And what's also very clear is the states that have the best educational outcomes spend more per pupil than states that are on the other end of that. And our challenge with Kansas is, where are we going to fall in that? Because we've always been a high-achieving state. A lot of data, a lot of different ways you compute it would put Kansas in the top 10 states. Well, our latest measure says we're still number 10, barely, but we're spending now 31st. There's no state that does better, that spends more than Kansas. That's why what the legislature did to kind of finally start investing some more money back in the system is so important, to hopefully begin to turn that around. And so, you know, that action, that tax increase, that's controversial, and we wanted to kind of put in this document some of the key things to think about, and this just gives you a sense of what those facts are, why investment is important, the fact that we need to compete with other states. There's evidence that we're starting to fall behind, that we've had very limited budgets, we can start to move ahead. And then I think the last thing is really critical. When we look at what Kansas has done in the past to be successful, and when we look at states that are most successful, there's some common things that they do. One of them is they tend to have more people. They tend to have smaller class sizes. They have more teachers. They have more support staff. They have more librarians. They have more social workers. They even have more administrators. The fact of the matter is they put more adults at work with kids. That's really what characterizes the highest achieving states, and frankly, that's why it costs more money to do. And that's something that Kansas, when we look at the data, we're more like other states in doing that. And we think that's part of the reason we've been successful. Now we know another part of that has to do with decisions the local boards make in our communities. And now I'd like Rob to come up. He's going to talk a little bit about what's on page 3, maybe kind of what your role is. So we're going to ask you to give us some feedback.
As we put this together for the summer, every summer KASB does an advocacy tour when we go and visit and talk about the efforts that have happened last spring. And more than likely, anybody that's tied to education kind of at least paid lightly attention to Topeka this past spring and what was going on and has a highlight. And so as Mark has talked about, we looked at all the things that are coming together and said, the spotlight is on education. The spotlight in Kansas on education in the 2016 elections. If you talk to anybody, education was the #1 issue. Turned out for every single candidate that ran, oddly enough, but it was the #1 issue that everybody focused on. It was one of the top issues that was voted on, and it was one of the top discussions for 114 days in Topeka from January until June. So the spotlight's on education. And as Mark said, now we've got a new funding formula, we've got a new vision, we've got additional resources and dollars, and there's a new tax plan that raises everybody's taxes in the state. So now the question is, where do we go? What are the results? Who's that spotlight on? And our conversation was, really, it can't just be focused on the classroom. It can't just be focused on an individual or a district or an organization. It's got to be a broad perspective of what we serve. And we identified 5 different groups that need to be part of this conversation, part of moving forward, as we see how we move Kansas forward to K-12 education, how we move into the next generation of leading the world. So of course, school boards, that's our audience, that's our membership. The Kansas Association of School Boards, for 100 years, has served the school boards throughout the state of Kansas, and we still do that, and that's the membership that guides us and helps us to drive it. They have an important role on the local level. How do you take that vision from the State Board of Education, and how do you hone that locally? How do you decide what makes the most sense? How do we take that and enhance it? How do we not limit ourselves to what the statewide vision is, but how do we enhance it for the Basehor-Linwood School District, or for Bonner Springs down the road, or for Garden City on the other side of the state? How do we do that? And the board has got to have that vision to put in place, and then also have the resources and the desire to put the resources behind it to make that successful. So they play a key role in the leadership. Educators and administrators. You're the team that executes. Day in and day out, you're in the classroom with the students. You're in the building making the decisions of where funding needs to go on a day-to-day basis and how we make those investments, how we spend our time, what pieces of curriculum need to be utilized, how do we get the students to achieve more, and how do we make the broad vision something that we can take into the classroom and move those students through and on there. And so you're really the ones on the ground day in and day out making that impact. And how do we support that? And what knowledge do you bring back to the table that needs to be part of the dialogue so we can make sure it's successful? Students and parents play a role. We've got to have that there. It's part of the overall vision. Communication with our families, with our communities, with our parents, and having them feedback what's helping them, how can we help them, how can they help their students, and what's helping the students. The individualized plan for every single student throughout the state, part of the vision that we've got to do so we can know how best to engage them and they be a part of that, and they're part of the dialogue and communication. The community has got to be a part of your conversation. Your local businesses, your industry. The students that leave your school district are more likely to stay in and around your school district than they are to leave. Most people stay within a region than they do to move. Kansas is certainly one of those states that does that. And so you're educating the future of this community and the communities that surround you. And certainly the state of Kansas is educating the future of Kansas. And so we've got to be engaged and have them in the dialogue, and they play an important role. How do we best prepare them for the workforce? How do we best prepare them to be contributing citizens? How do we best prepare them to be engaged in the community and serve in their community in a capacity that helps us to continue to grow and thrive, both on a local level and a regional level and a state level? And last but not least is the state leaders. Now, we don't have any of our state representatives here today, but they certainly have a role. We talk about this all the time. Article 6, Section 6 of the Kansas Constitution mandates that the state provide public education. And oftentimes you guys has anybody heard the talking point that educations need more money, they already collect over 50% of all the state spending? Do you ever hear that as kind of a put down, this is why educators need more? I find that, I've only been with KASB for a year. My focus was in local government on the municipal side prior to being here on the education side, and I heard that and I go, well great, why wouldn't you put all your money in your future? That's your investment. I understand why that's a concern, you know? It's only 52%? Awesome, let's make it 65%, you know? Why wouldn't you spend your money there? And I think that that's the conversation we need to make sure we have there. And a lot of our state legislators had that conversation this year. A lot of them went above and beyond to do work and say, we've got to come up with a plan, a new funding formula, and you can see the analysis at KASB. When I say KASB, Mark Tallman really did that analysis on the back and literally wrote the thesis on it. So he understands the funding formula and can say, here's where this formula works. There's dollars to be put there, now how do we make that educated? So they're part of the plan, they've got to be part of the discussion. And now we're here to do the dialogue. Now we're here to get the feedback from our communities throughout the state. As Mark had mentioned, we're going to do this in, I believe we have 27 different locations planned out over the next 3 weeks throughout the state of Kansas that we're going to have this dialogue. Our hope is that we're going to see school board members. Our hope is that we'll have administrators, we'll have educators, we'll have parents, we'll have community leaders, we'll have state leaders there. And they can give us back the feedback that we need to know as the advocacy group in Topeka working on education's behalf. Where do we go from here? How do we make this conversation continue forward? How do we coalesce our efforts to move in a positive direction to achieve the vision that our state board has laid out, which is an ambitious one, but a great one, to lead the world in the success of all our students. And so at this point in time, and Mark will probably join me up here, and we just kind of want to hear your feedback for anybody, from the district level, from that. What are those top issues? What are those top concerns? Where does that conversation begin? What are you hearing out there that we all need to know about? How can that dialogue begin? And if you don't have questions, we have questions for you, so. Either way.
I have a question about the 7 school districts which are going to be guinea pigs, I guess, in this process. The process by which it's being done, I'm a little unsure of it because it seems like it's taking place at a really odd time that you have to have schools voting. But schools are voting over the summer when the staff's not around. So we ask for conversation. And there's no conversation going on among the staffs to talk about this. How is the state board reconciling that little contradiction?
You know, and I certainly won't speak for the board. I know we were able to sit down with Commissioner Watson a few weeks ago and kind of, listen to him and the vision of this. And I think that there are just some unfortunate points of the calendar. And unfortunately, where the timing was to get a school year to start, we needed to have this done now. You can't redesign a school in the middle of the school year. You can't go home for Christmas break and then you come back and go, hey guys, we're doing something completely different now. Gear up and do that. And so, it's an unfortunate piece of it. And I think that the goal is to find those 7 districts that have embraced cans and can over the past 2 years and looked at that and said, where does this lead us? What can we do? And they're ready to take on that challenge. And, and I'm going to applaud them. I think it's impressive from my side that it's not a decision that, we can call an administrator and say, does your district want to take this on? And the superintendent and USD 2517 says, whatever. Yeah, I'm in. We'll do it. You've got to have the school board buy-in. You've got to have 70% of the teachers in that building, 80% of the teachers vote to buy into that. I mean, we're asking, the state board is asking 7 school districts to kind of just say, we're going to forget everything we've always thought this is how education should be. This is how a school year should run. This is how it should be. And we're going to come up with and redesign how it's going to be successful. And we're going to do it in 1 year. Because by the end of this year, we want to be able to start modeling that to the rest of the state. And so the timing is a good question. And we'll pass that along to see what that is. But I know that they're excited about going forward. And nothing else, Twitter is such an intriguing tool now that you can watch communication. It's been interesting watching the KS Ledge feed over the past couple of weeks, or the KSED, hashtag, as you see districts throughout the state that are tweeting it out and they're excited. Our application's in. We're on the list. We want to do this. We're ready to challenge ourselves as an organization and help redesign education and be part of that leading the way for Kansas. And so I think that's exciting. If you have that buy-in, I think people are excited about the opportunities it could be and what it means for the rest of us. If the district's not chosen, the one thing I thought was great is that Commissioner Watson said, that doesn't mean you can't participate. Redesign all you want. We've only got so many staff people that can be in so many districts. 7's what we chose. But if you want to send staff members down there, if Coffeyville happens to be one of the districts that's chosen, and you want to send a staff member down there to observe what Coffeyville's doing while they're doing it, great. Learn from them, participate in that, do it, and open that door. And I think that's great.
There's no money attached to this for the districts, is there?
No, I think there's just staff support from the department.
Staff support, but Amy?
Well, I just want to say that Olathe, we applied, and we had mixed response from staff. The word goes out, and for some buildings, the timing just wasn't right, whatever was going on in the buildings. But we had several where the principals got on the phone, the Teachers Association worked with us, and they rounded up. It took some time. But for those who are really looking for this opportunity, the board, we just stepped back and said, you know what, we want our staff to be innovative. Let's take advantage of some extra resources in the form of personnel and dollars from the state. And let's see what our staff can come up with. And like I say, some buildings were like, you know what, too much going on, not a good time, but others were all over it.
Yeah, and that's probably the key, is that although the district has to be involved, it's actually the building would be selected. So
Right.
that means you can
Oh,
find.
a district is selected.
And it has to have one elementary and one secondary. But it's like not everyone in Olathe, for example, had to do it. So.
When we first heard this, the option for schools to apply for this, a couple of the building principals started talking and said, oh, that's us, we're in. And then we started looking at the requirements, and it's like, yeah, we gotta move fast. So the first thing we did is those building principals went and talked to their building leadership teams, got them together in the summertime, and was able to talk to them, and had 100% buy-in from the building leadership teams, and then presented to the school board, had some conversation. School board unanimously voted to support the application process and move in that direction. Got a survey out to the staffs of those two buildings, and we had 100% buy-in wanting to move forward. So I was really happy. I was kind of surprised to see the amount of teachers respond. But you're right. It's Twitter, if it's whatever thing that is on communication, they get on board and they act accordingly. So ours will be in the mail here real soon.
One of the things our board was a little concerned about was the timing was so quick. We don't want to rush into something that we are just guaranteed to fail at. And so we were sure to clarify with the State Department that you can be accepted, and if for some reason you can't fulfill it, you're not held to whatever.
You must.
You can't take away the money from you.
They do want you to go through all the way, but there's no penalty for some reason.
And the student session was brought along by because when we first heard about it, it was Brad was wonder and then Jason Scott. And so Brad told us we're not looking for districts who have all the answers. We're looking for the districts that are willing to take that risk. That's where we're at.
So you have a few of us from that building,
Okay.
which is why I think you have a good group right here that showed up for that building. And some of those conversations even happened at our grade level team meetings this summer. And I had two staff look at me and say, do we want to do this? Like, am I supposed to vote yes on this? Yes, I mean, like literally.
So can we see those ballots?
And I said, so I tried to share some information just so you know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, we're jumping. Because you feel that way. more of instructional coach kind of support? Would it be professional development given? I guess.
Well,
I'm
the
kind of
key thing, I think that, and we're not the experts on this by any means, but KSDE has filled 2 staff positions, one for secondary, one elementary. So there'll basically be a State Department staff person for each level whose full-time responsibility will be to work for those 7 schools. So that's a resource they'll provide. And then I know other efforts are being made to provide other types of support. I think, Dr. Hine, we're willing to work with the boards on how do you manage change, how do you look at those kinds of things to consider what this is going to be and manage your way through it. So I think a lot of both the State Department, KSB, other groups are going to try to do what they can to say, we know this is going to be challenging, we don't have the answers, but to the extent we can be helpful. And of course the other thing is this does occur at a time where everybody is at least getting a little more money than we've been used to. So there may not be extra money, but at least you can be looking at doing some things in a year where maybe you're not just forced to say, well, what do we have to cut this year? Did I see another hand over here? Did you want to say something?
Well, I was scratching my head, but
Oh, I thought this is an auction, so if you do anything wrong,
what did I get? What did I thought? I was going to say, I know Randy asked us at KSB to do some training, and then he asked USA, the School Administrators Association, to help, and he asked KMEA as well. I don't know what their roles are going to be, but he had a go-ahead from them, from all those associations before he announced it. So there are a lot of people helping support. It's not money, but there are folks that are willing to step up and help.
And some may even argue, part of the excitement of it is that there aren't any answers. And part of the reason why probably it has the best possibility of succeeding is because there aren't any predetermined answers. The state board and the staff up there haven't already decided, we think we know what the reinvention should look like, and we're going to kind of guide people in direction. It really sounds like it's going to be 7 districts, and each one of them could come up with an entirely new approach, an entirely new direction, and an entirely new pathway, and we're going to learn. And we're going to find success stories that make sense, and an Olathe and a Basehor-Linwood are probably going to have different approaches, certainly as compared to, I'm trying to think of who else I've seen. Flint Hills, USD 443, I think, was one that...
I talked to Randy, and there are 14 applicants so far, and they expected some more who would have been approved last night, and I saw several on Twitter, so I'm going to guess they might be as many as 20.
Well, other thoughts or questions that Rob did allude, we do have in your material, should you be interested in the fine print of the new school finance law. You have a copy of that, but are there some other things? We're really, trying at this point to say, a lot of exciting things happening, but maybe some of it is, what do people don't know? We need to pay more attention to helping people understand, or just as if you're somebody excited enough to apply for one of these, is there a sense, what can the state do? Is it giving you more help? Is it getting out of the way? I mean, are there policies that we need to be thinking about as well in this area to help with redesign and getting success improved?
Well, I'm always a little concerned about top-down redesign, whether the top is the state, whether it's the legislature or the state board, or even the local board. I like top-down. I like redesigning to get in the classroom with the teachers. They're the ones that know most. I think anything that gives teachers flexibility is what's needed in the way of policy and law. I say this as a former teacher.
Well,
I hated being handcuffed.
And I didn't write that down just to make a note of you to get back to you, but we do want to hear that. And I think that's something that, as a school board association, we've always shared that concern that too much is dictated at the state level or the federal level. And our point has always been, let's agree on the goals and results, and then you ought to hold people accountable for doing that, not how they do it, not telling them what they have to do. And even there, you have to be careful because you don't want the goals to be so restrictive. That was a lot of concern about kind of No Child Left Behind. The goal became all about just the test scores. So how do we avoid that? So it is a balance, but yeah, it's good. And that's really kind of what we're looking for is how do we, when we go in and work with the legislature, what are the things that we ought to be stressing? And certainly we've historically talked about the importance of a lot of local control. And I think our route messages as we're talking to leaders, how boards also interact with their teachers and their staff and parents and community to do this is important.
By the way, on the issue of local control, I've heard from people on the far right that their vision of local control means a whole lot more homeschooling and charter schools. I would like to come up with a better term than local control. Maybe something more specific, like basically say
Locally elected.
locally elected control. Yeah.
Local democracy in
Yeah,
action.
yeah. That's, I mean, I couldn't believe when I heard somebody say local control means, you know, homeschooling.
It's all what you define as local. And you just pointed out to some extent local is the classroom.
Yes.
So it is that right balance. And of course, I'm sure you know, if you've been involved, that part of, I think the Commissioner and State Board's vision of this redesign is a way to show what we can do within the system without having to put more focus on independent charter schools and some of those things that other states have looked at that the data doesn't really suggest have yielded really different results, but it's certainly controversial and raises a lot of concerns among public school advocates.
No, I think selling this to community and parents will be imperative, and actually I think that's going to have come from that group right there, as far as this is what we are wanting to accomplish from the classroom. My fear in our district is, and probably the same, and maybe others will be, well, if it's good enough for Basehor Elementary, why are we not doing it at Linwood Ridge? And so that's a little bit of my concern. We only have one high school to worry about, but we do have several elementaries. So, but again, as you talk about top down, I really think it's going to be bottom up because I think it'll be incumbent upon those people to be communicating with parents about what this redesign is going to look like as far as everyday classroom.
And one of the things that concerns me about the design is that, especially in districts that just have one high school, you don't have a control group. You don't have to say, we've redesigned one high school, we're not redesigning another, which one has the better results? I mean, that concerns me about this design.
Though, I suppose part of the issue is if part of your redesign is thinking about your one high school. I mean, so that too, I think, will be part of what needs to be looked at is, I think the question is just going to come down to, I mean, how different may dreams turn out to be when you actually get there. Because everything we tend to look at, just because you own so hard not to, is you're just adapting what you already have. And some extent that's inevitable, but I think the idea behind this is to say, it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to change everything in the school to redesign it. Because as we know, I mean, a lot is working very well for a lot of kids. And I think that in some ways has been our challenge. How do you do better for kids that are not being successful without messing it up, for the system that is working well for others? And I think that, in my sense, that's a lot of where you get parent and community concern as well. Hey, things are working pretty well for my kid, or I turned out okay. Why are you, why are you changing?
I see it as an opportunity for us to, I've done IDP for a long time, and we've talked about this in several different ways, but I see it as an opportunity to let some things go, to do some other things. Not add to, but kind of, opportunity to take some things away, to redesign some of those kinds of things,
Well, that's exactly what you were saying, that we can't always just look to add more to our plates. I mean, because it's full. And you're right, we're doing a lot of things, I think, really well, but we all recognize the fact. I mean, we're getting ready just next week. K2 teachers are getting ready to go through some training, to work on improving our reading instruction. And we all believe, and like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. There is nobody in the world that doesn't, I'm beyond excited to start this training because I know there's new stuff coming all the time. As long as I do this job, I want to find the best way to help every little kiddo that I can. And so, but you're right, just we have to look at what works and what doesn't and figure those things out and get rid of what's not. But there are a lot of things that we're doing that are working too, just like you said.
You guys are all elementary teachers, aren't you?
Yes. We are.
Yeah, I can tell.
Sorry.
I'm the cynical high school
Don't be
teacher.
a judgmental high school teacher.
No, I'm cynical. I was really with cynical.
Well, and I think back when we piloted the kindergarten, we went to the all-day kindergarten and, we started that at Golden Ridge and, you have to pilot something to see if it's going to work. And so being able to take, 2 buildings in the district and try a new approach is a positive thing because, it's a new approach, it goes well, then we can continue that to the other buildings. So.
Sure.
And I would say it's encouraging that you said it might be different from one district to the next. To me, that is kind of a bottom-up approach because you actually are hearing what the teachers want to try in their building or what, and then that working with that faculty member to see, so every district might be different. Well, that is that bottom-up approach because we're starting at our building and that communication is a two-way street. So then I have a question. For these schools that are chosen, will you be, or will they be trying to get these schools together?
I'm
kind of
guessing,
feed on
yes.
each other
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
is that
that's part of the plan. That's what Randy told me.
In other words, sending help out to you, but also bring, and expect lots of visitors. Because, people do come in and observe, and we want to do the same thing. Part of what we're talking about, KASB, is in our publications and, our videos. We will be doing, trying to just tracking what's happening so that other people in the state, the other 1,393 buildings or whatever, can also kind of get a sense of what people are looking at. And obviously things like this have happened before. I mean, people are always trying new things, but I think our hope now is we have this moment where there's kind of both a sense of urgency about making change, but a sense of excitement that maybe we can lead it and it's not being sort of forced down. And I guess, my sense is we better take advantage of that. I mean, we kind of have the constellation of a state board and a commissioner that really want to challenge, but also are extremely supportive and positive about the system and the profession, and a legislature that right now seems more willing to do that. But, we've been going around the state talking to newspaper people as well, newspaper editors, boards, editorial boards and such. And, one of the very first ones we were at, we were talking about this glorious new day and the new money and the great things. The question was, well, when are we going to see results? And there's that. And we tried to make the point, well, not right away because of the nature of things, but at the same time, there is this sense, well, we're okay. Their point was, we as an editorial, we went up to bat for the tax increase. We wanted to support more funding. So, yeah, we can give you a little time, but we also expect it. And so some of it may be, even if we start seeing that people are really embracing this and trying to, that's one thing we can show. But then I think when we can start seeing that there are some differences over a few years, hopefully that'll be very positive because, real blunt, we went through a 6-year experiment on cutting taxes that certain things were promised, and what happened wasn't delivered. And I suspect there will be those that will look exactly the same way if over a period of time, well, we did this and we're not seeing changes. It'll be that much easier for the next cycle to happen. So no pressure, I guess is what I'm saying.
The whole state's resting on what you guys
Other questions or just things we need to know?
Can I switch gears a tiny bit?
Sure.
So as a kindergarten teacher, with our kindergarten readiness that has come about with our funding for all-day kindergarten, I had attended the King Conference a while back before we knew we were going to have the funding. And they shared that if we did get this additional funding and we'd be able to do all-day kindergarten, we were also looking at putting like a developmental assessment or test in place that would be required. Do you know anything about that, or whether that would happen this school year?
I don't know, but I think maybe.
Last year, they piloted a kindergarten readiness program that was supposed to be an assessment tool.
And I think the state board this summer at one meeting was kind of talking about it because, I mean, that is just the reality is, you know, you don't get any money without strings attached. At a minimum, people are going to want to measure some things. And so I'm guessing that is coming with it. And of course, as we know, you know, most districts have already been doing all-day kindergarten. It's just a question of how to fund it. So the real issue is, does the funding of all-day kindergarten, what does that extra money allow you to do?
The last I read about the kindergarten readiness is the training packets, what they piloted is coming this summer. We've not received them yet for the 2017-18 year, and they will be for 2018. So there's a change to that.
Anything else? I'll make sure everyone has a chance to comment.
Questions are one of, you know, this is our third one really that we've done. I guess a couple weeks ago we did a small one in Topeka, or round table, I would say that one was. But you know, one of the topics we talked about was the Gannon case, and of course that, you know, literally 1 week out of the oral arguments there. Any questions or concerns or thoughts there? Hopefully, you know, I'm sure some of you guys got along. Mark and Donna Whiteman, our lead attorney for KASB, did a nice breakdown and rundown of how the oral arguments went, and so that expectation, of course, it's on our website, KASB.org. You can go there and link over to our videos that are on YouTube, and you can watch that and kind of get that analysis at any time. But you know, I would say that's still the one kind of out there thing that we're still not sure of, because the Supreme Court will weigh in at some point in time. They are lucky enough to get their own schedule that they get to determine on their own, and never have to tell anybody until Friday morning at 9 a.m. when they've decided their schedule's time. So, and how that will play out for this school year, but more importantly, how it will play out for long term. You know, what role the courts play in this discussion, what role that plays with the legislature, and in conversations of how that plays into 2018, which, you know, begins again another election cycle, another discussion period, and the conversations. You know, I'll let Mark kind of say it as he wrapped up this afternoon meeting in Shawnee Mission, kind of talk a little bit about what the legislature did this spring and what that means and how that conversation needs to be held locally for schools. So
I have a stirring conclusion. I just want before I do that, because you will leave moved and weeping, something. Any other questions before?
Well, the only thing the things that keep you up at night is we're 1 month into our new budget year. We've got budget software, so we ran no budget.
Right.
And then I wake up about 2 o'clock in the morning and told myself, wow, I hope Dale's printouts were correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we haven't put paper to pen yet.
Right.
And so that was just one of those that I woke up hoping that the number that it showed our additional dollars was, because that's what we negotiated.
Because you've spent it, huh?
Yep.
And like I said, we're 1 month in, and my board clerk's going, would you stop? We don't even have our budget yet. So it's really, we know we have to have it to the county clerk by August 25th, and that's almost August 1st.
Well, I think, you know, that the department was maybe hoping to hear something from the court, I think they now realize, there's a good chance they may not, and so you're going to have to be able to do something. So you are not alone with that worry from everything we've heard. That,
On Friday, Dale said that if it wasn't out by the first, they were going to go ahead and release the software and then go back and fix it if they had to. See if you have another week of nightmares.
Yeah. Try to relax. Okay, well, the thing we just kind of wanted to wrap up, I mean, obviously, this is great you're here, and for us, as we try to go around the state, it's wonderful to kind of hear your thoughts as somebody who wanted to be a part of this, your district, your school, so congratulations and good luck. I guess we'll find out about that, but, we really wanted to stress that the key thing to understand is, and this may be something we as kind of the lobbyists see more than you're trying to educate kids, you may not pay as much attention to the legislature, but this was a pretty historic session in many ways. I mean, after several years of a lot of rancor and division and frankly, a lot of skepticism about public education and the lack of funding that we all saw, the legislature did come together with a finance formula, and there's a lot of debate over, was it enough, and was it enough fast enough? And there's individual pieces that bother some districts, but for the most part, the legislature went back and pretty overwhelmingly, because most of the people who voted against it were Democrats who didn't think it put enough money in or didn't like some of the features. If you add those votes to the Republicans in terms of support for the basic formula, pretty overwhelming for a formula that was just rejected 2 years ago as pretty awful. But the real key vote was the tax increase, and to get 2/3 of the legislature to vote for Dr. Hyde, the largest tax increase in history, in this political climate, in a state still struggling economically, that's pretty remarkable. And I think what that showed is that most legislators, number one, they did hear from voters that they were concerned about education. Number two, most of them really do believe in education and want to keep our school system strong, and we're worried about it. But a year from now, we're going to be in the middle of primary campaigns, and those legislators who voted yes, a lot of them are going to be having to run against people who are saying, they just raised your taxes and you're not getting anything for it. So it's important we help people understand what they're getting.
Has there ever been a tax increase that wasn't the largest tax increase in history?
See, you would be weeping now with emotion, but he ruined the mood by coming back to it. I would have to check, Dr. Hyde, probably not.
And why is that?
Well, because inflation, and so really, if we adjust, we could try to go back and adjust past tax increases to inflation. We know how to do that. So maybe we'll answer that. But
I see a chart coming.
here, Dr. Hyde. But the point is, we hope that you will keep that in mind as you're talking around the board table, as you're talking to your community, you're talking to other parents. The importance of doing that was to really begin to reinvest in our schools. And we're pretty confident with that we will get a good payoff, but it may not happen immediately. So next summer, it's really important, we think, that voters be hearing about the positive things that are happening, because there will be people talking about the negative side of that. So we want you to do that. And the other thing is, if there's anything KASB can do to help in your district, to help you and with the other organizations we work with, to help you do the job of working with your community to implement these changes. If you want to do that, we have on page 3 contact information for our advocacy staff. So if you do have any follow-up questions, if you want to get on our electronic publications, anything like that, just let us know. A lot of what we put out through social media, everything else, it's all free, it's all available. If you want to know what's going on in education and politics, we're committed to helping you see that in any way we can. So, nothing else. We really want to thank our hosts. We want to thank all of you who came out this afternoon, and good luck on the upcoming school year, and good luck in your application. Thank you.